I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. 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 I'm sorry,
okay? Hey, everybody, and welcome to I'm Sorry, Okay? A podcast where we are watching so much Degrassi. I'm Mary, here with Paul and LD. This week we watched Season 1, Episode 8 of Degrassi Junior High, Nothing to Fear. This episode was written by Scott Barry, directed by John Bertram, and originally aired on March 8th, 1987. In this episode, LD has trouble dealing with her father's hospitalization, which elicits painful memories of her mother's death. A search party is organized for the school snake. Although I don't know if I'd call 3 students a search party necessarily. I actually thought the level of alarm about the missing snake was a little low.
I'm not really sure that Susie also counts as part of the search party either, because she's more just there to chastise rather than contribute.
Yeah, she doesn't really help them at all. She's just like, she can't believe it.
Which is fair.
We'll get to that. I've got thoughts on that.
Okay, so we start this episode following LD. She's leaving for school. She stops by her father's auto shop, and she's eating marshmallows on toast for breakfast.
Sounds good.
Her dad asks if she's finished cleaning the kitchen yet, which she has not because she just got ready for school. I don't know if she was expected to do this before school or what's going on here, but her dad is very focused on this kitchen. He tells her to do it after school, but she wants to help work on Mr. Jeremiah's car, and her dad is like, no.
He tells her that she's 13 and is supposed to be turning into a lady.
Yes.
Duh.
Which means cleaning the kitchen.
Wow.
Yeah.
The most feminine of all activities.
I mean, maybe he's trying to channel Vula's dad. You know, Vula was in episode 2, just making all of the meals.
Yes, I did. Yes, I have notes about that later. And because Vula is the one who's really sympathetic to her. And I'm like, yeah, they really have the same kind of dad who expects them to act like a sexist, way that you would want your wife to act, basically.
Absolutely. A really antiquated idea of what the woman's role in the house is.
Yeah, and with LD, her mom has previously passed away. With Vula, she has a mom, and I just don't know what she's up to, but Vula apparently has to fill that role. But yeah, so her dad kind of gender shames her, I guess, for not cleaning, and also because she's wearing a hat, which her mother would have been very disappointed in. Apparently her mom hates hats.
That's
the hat thing.
She plays sports. She's an athlete. I'm like, why can't she wear a hat? She's, maybe she doesn't want to wear sunglasses while she's riding her bike and she wants to keep the sun out of her eyes. It just seems practical.
Or maybe she just looks dope in a hat.
Also that. She actually does. Her hair looks great when she's wearing a hat.
Yeah, she's got that perfect subtle curl.
Yes.
Basically from the line of the hat down. And then when she takes off her hat, everything that's under the hat is straight.
Yes. So
which
it's the perfect
I also
accessory.
love. Yes, it's perfect for her. Some of us do have that wave pattern. My hair doesn't really get curly till it gets to my ears. So
yeah, it's probably something
real.
about the weight of your hair. I don't know. But anyway, so she heads off and she mutters, "Drop dead."
Drop dead.
Oof.
What are the odds?
Yes, and what are the odds? Her father immediately goes to turn a wrench, grabs his chest, and then tells his assistant mechanic, Jeff, he better call a doctor.
I feel like there's no teen show on the planet where someone says something to their parent like, "I hate you, I wish you would die," something along those lines, and then everyone's fine. That's never happened.
Well, so I was going to ask, do you think that she cursed her dad by telling him to drop dead, or that he's just been smoking too many cigarettes?
It can be both. I think she probably manifested this. But I think probably his terrible health, did not help.
They show him smoking a cigarette while he's like doing work on a car, so that he's clearly nice and addicted.
I love to smoke cigarettes just next to things like gasoline.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect combination. So, I also have a fun fact. In this scene, we meet Jeff. Tom Melissus, who appeared in this episode as Mr. Delacourte's assistant Jeff, would later play Dom Perino in Degrassi, The Next Generation. It's Mr. Perino!
How the fuck did I not?
It's a
Oh,
little baby Perino.
Oh
I
my
knew I
God.
recognized him somehow.
oh my God.
Wow.
This is something. This is great.
And they must have really liked his work as Jeff, because this is the only episode that he appears in Degrassi Junior High, I believe.
Degrassi seems to really care for its actors. They're like, you want to come back, you can come back. Some of them are lifers. Dude, look at Snake,
Joey Jeremiah.
Caitlin.
Yeah.
Like,
Legacy characters.
Absolutely.
dude.
So we have one more legacy character to add to the list. So over at school, in Miss Avery's class, Miss Avery is still walking around touching every shoulder she sees. It's how she obtains her power. LD, Spike, and Vula are working on mapping out the area around the school. They mention the hospital, and LD immediately has a reaction. She says hospitals give her the creeps. And I think Snake is like, why? And I'm like, that seems like a pretty standard fear, having a fear of hospitals.
Snake asks why later in the episode when people are talking about the fact that LD's dad is in the hospital, and I'm just kind of like, someone's parent is in the hospital. Do you really not understand? Why? Snake is basically just existing in the back of this entire episode to be like, I don't understand your phobias.
Yeah, he doesn't understand anything, but he doesn't ever have much to say either. So they
Good for
just give
him.
him like a what or a why every now and then, just so we don't forget who he is.
Never
Which is
forget.
fair.
Never forget.
Oh, and this is also the first time that Spike has any speaking lines, I believe. We have seen her kind of in the background of a few episodes, but this is the first time we really get to hear from her. So LD, Spike, and Vula make plans to meet in front of the school after LD is done cleaning the kitchen. Oh yeah, she's still talking. Also, how trashed is this kitchen? Like, this is like a big project, apparently.
Maybe it's a huge kitchen. I mean, honestly, it could just be like every other TV show where there's like a single dad and like a teenager. The whole place is just trashed.
Dads in the 80s don't understand chores.
No.
So LD complains about her dad, and Vula tells her that her hot dad is actually pretty strict too, which, true.
We've all seen it.
Strict daddy.
Strict daddy. Canadian dads love when their daughters do the dishes. Did either of you do the dishes as a teenager? Because I absolutely was not doing the dishes like ever.
Dude, I'm gonna be honest here. I don't think I was doing any chores.
So my family would all leave immediately after dinner, and I would feel bad for my mom who had to clean up after everyone, and I would offer to help.
That's very on brand.
Wow, what an
Yeah.
angel.
Yep.
Very on brand.
So it wasn't a chore that you were assigned, but it was one that you volunteered to take on.
I felt bad and volunteered.
I mean, we had a dishwasher, so like I would help my mom load the dishwasher.
Mm.
I don't think I put them away.
Yeah, I'm not sure I was involved in any part of the process, but I would put my dishes into the sink. Okay, moving on. Over in the library, Susie is scolding Arthur and Yick for leaving the snake's cage open. Oh wait, I guess I didn't mention there's a snake and it's part of some class project, and Arthur and Yick were responsible for it. So apparently it has climbed out the top of its... Would you call this a cage?
I think it's a terrarium.
A terrarium? Yeah. So the terrarium was left open. Melanie overhears them and is extremely upset about this news about the missing snake.
Fair.
Yeah, listen, this is reasonable. I also
Yeah.
would not want a snake in my school. That could just
No.
be anywhere. I also agree that Susie is right to be upset,
Mm-hmm.
but I just think she's very mean about it. Although Arthur kind of mansplains to her. He's just like, he tells her to be reasonable. And Susie's like, oh, he escaped by himself. How? With his hands? So they're both really sassing each other.
And Arthur says something like, "We closed it," and Yika's like, yeah, anything you say," which I personally enjoyed. I like this B plot is fun.
Yeah, this B plot is good.
It's way more enjoyable than any of the previous B plots because now they're stalking a snake instead of another person.
Instead of the person snake.
Instead of the person snake, they're stalking this actual snake. And I wasn't actually sure how Susie was even involved in this project anyway.
I was trying to figure out if they were all doing a group project together. It sounds like maybe they
possibly.
were.
And they were just... It did seem like an episode about group projects.
It seemed like an episode about phobias and about group projects. So
yes.
like...
a winning combination.
Yeah, your A plot and your B plot are they both have fear as an undercurrent, just like life, and they both have group dynamics running through them, just like life.
The group projects don't stop just because you're afraid.
That's actually very good advice to LD.
So when LD gets home from school, Jeff is there waiting and he tells her that her dad is in the hospital, but that he called and he said he would be okay, but asked them to bring a few things over. And Jeff says, don't worry, he's gonna be okay. He's as grumpy as ever.
I took a note and I wrote, her dad left a list of stuff that he wants brought to him, and then wrote, what could these things possibly be in the late 80s? There is no laptop. There is no phone. There is no iPod. What does he want? A book or something? But then also later we do see, I just believe in general in this episode, like the Delacourt family is like looks of the week, just nonstop bangers. But I love his matching pajama set when he's in the hospital. He's just like, oh, just because I'm in the hospital does not mean I'm going for one of these gowns. Like, I'm going for high style.
Yeah, you can still be comfortable. Maybe he's a tourist. He wants a luxurious hospital experience in his favorite PJs. So back at the school, Spike and Vula are waiting on the front steps for LD. And Spike is getting real salty that LD has not shown up yet. She's like, I was supposed to work on a science project with LD last year and ended up doing all the work. And Vula's like, well, didn't she have the flu? And Spike is like, she's always got excuses.
I do get that, though. I feel like there were people I had to do group projects with in school, and it was like, no matter what, I always ended up doing a lot of the work. But then I think when I got to high school, I started being the LD more, a little bit.
Just bailing.
Not bailing, but just kind of being like, oh my God, okay. But I guess it depended on the project. There were some projects that I went so hard on that it would be shocking even to adult me. But I understand if you don't know what's going on with somebody, I can understand being pissed off that someone who said they're going to be there at 4:30 is not there. You're giving your afternoon. You're there, and they're nowhere to be found. So I do get it.
Definitely.
I think I would always definitely do my part of a school project, but I was not necessarily trying to do any other parts. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, I really didn't enjoy group projects. I think I tried to get away with doing as little as work as possible, but I would do the work that I got.
I unfortunately did a significant amount of micromanaging on some projects. Actually, not unlike my adult life.
So none of us were necessarily the LD in this situation. We're more on the Vula Spike spectrum of group participation in class projects.
Yeah, Vula and Spike seem like team players. They both want to get the project done. They're going to do their part. They don't want
But
to
I also
do
love
extra
that they're
work.
not starting without her. Maybe
I don't
they do
know.
and we just don't see it, but I love that they're just like waiting on her.
I know, right?
Like, oh, I guess we
Absolutely.
can't work either. So over at LD's house, she's packing her dad's bag, throwing in some family pictures, and remembering conversations with her dad from when her mom was in the hospital. So this is sort of a repeated thing in the episode where when she starts to kind of think about her dad in the hospital, she replays. We hear this voiceover that's like replaying conversations where she's clearly pretty young. I think she's maybe 5 or something when her mom passed away, and so it honestly seems like it's something that she hasn't really dealt with, which kind of tracks for the 80s. Like, it doesn't seem like she really had anyone to talk about this with. Like, once her mom passed away, she has like I think 2 brothers and her dad. Maybe Jeff's around a lot at this point, but so she's surrounded by a lot of like male energy, and it just seems like there's not a lot of processing of feelings. So that's kind of why this is like bringing up a lot of this for her. She's like just now starting to like kind of think about these things because she's been forced to.
Look, we'll process those feelings when the damn kitchen is cleaned, all right?
And not a moment before.
I was watching this just being like, oh, LD, you have PTSD and no one's helping you. Like when
she was having flashbacks, right?
Yeah, like this event is triggering a previous traumatic event that is, and it's affecting her life now. It's affecting her friendships. It's affecting her ability to work on her school project. It's really taking over her brain. So I'm really feeling for her. And is this the first time, by the way, that we find out that her first name is Lorraine?
Yes, I think so. In the flashbacks, her dad refers to her as Lorraine.
That's what I thought. It's not a very, it's not a butch name. Lorraine.
Lorraine. No, yeah, it makes sense why she started to go by LD.
As a Lauren LD, I relate to the Lorraine LD.
Yes, very similar, and it really just worked out for both of you.
I would say so, although I look like shit in a hat.
Maybe you just need to get the perfect curl going, and it's all you need.
That's actually a good point.
So Vula and Spike call to see where LD is, and she tells them she forgot and that she can't make it tonight. And she basically just blows them off and tells them she has to go. She doesn't really mention what's actually going on. And so this is why. So Spike gets like really annoyed because she thinks she just doesn't want to work on the project. She's not even really giving them an excuse except that she forgot about it. But back at her house, LD kind of freaks out and she doesn't actually want to go to the hospital. She says she has to stay home and clean the kitchen or her dad will be mad. And Jeff is actually a very understanding, like, friend of the family here. He gives her multiple chances to change her mind. And he says, your dad would rather see you than caring about the kitchen. But he also kind of backs off and, he doesn't try to, like, force her to go or anything.
I mean, he probably knows that her mom died when she was young. So he probably, if he has, like, any kind of emotional intelligence, is like, oh, this might be hard for her. Right. Did you guys notice that when Vula and Spike call LD like picks up and she's like, hello. Vula doesn't even say hi. She's just like, so where are you?
Vula's pissed. Vula's ready to start a new grudge up with LD. She's like, give me a reason, lady.
Yeah.
Vula is channeling her hot mad dad.
She's like, you said you would be here. You are not here. That's a lie.
Also, so I have 2 utilitarian props of the week this week. And the first one is when Jeff tells LD to go, like, he'll go to the hospital. She needs to lock up the garage. There's just like a sign that says Delacorte Garage, but it's like handwritten. It's really bad. It's like in
There's
cursive.
also a sign that says tire sale. That's like literally pencil on paper.
They did not have a huge sign budget. This was it. They spent it all on the Great Race episode, on all those signs that everyone was holding up while they were swimming.
I mean, they're just tired after making that many posters. Have you ever made a poster? It's a lot of work.
Yeah, as we found out in Kiss Me Steph.
Yeah, some people just don't even know how to make posters and stuff like that.
Yeah, sometimes
it's a mystery.
You have to hand bubble each letter, man.
Who's got time for that?
For like 30 posters.
And actually, and how we were saying about how, sorry, I'm changing subjects, but how this was a traumatic event. LD, she can't face going to the hospital, but she also can't face her friends or telling them what's going on. So she really is kind of like just frozen in just not reacting at all. So she's like replaying all of this kind of trauma in her head, but she just can't act on it like one way or the other. Because we don't even know what she's actually doing at home. I mean, maybe she's, cleaning this massive, filthy, disgusting kitchen all night long.
I think she's sitting completely still, being all consumed by existential dread. And quite frankly, like that's kind of this is the thing, is like stuff happens to me, or like, I'll have shit going on with me and I wait like, you guys are my best friends, and sometimes I won't tell you for like a month. I'll just be like, oh yeah, by the way, my mom has cancer. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, that's been going on for a while. But sometimes it's hard to tell people stuff that's hard, and
that's
it's like,
right.
And sometimes it's hard to like know how to talk about it then, because there might be follow-up questions, or there might be like, you know what I mean? And it's like, fuck, what if I don't know? And so like when I was in high school and there was like stuff happening at home, I wasn't telling my friends at school. And especially like LD doesn't seem like she's hanging out with these people, like having slumber parties. It seems like they're like school friends. It's like having your work friends. And so I'm also like, okay, well, maybe she doesn't feel ready to tell people that aren't in her sort of like inner circle that something's going on. Maybe they don't have a right to know, but then also it's like she has a bit of a responsibility to at least say something is going on, because
that's
of
why
this project.
She's bailing.
But I think like, it's very easy to say like, oh, this 13-year-old should have just been like, guys, I can't, something's going on at home. But like, it's hard to talk about stuff.
Yeah, and she clearly doesn't understand her own feelings, so I'm sure the thought of trying to talk about them with someone else is overwhelming. And also, even though she's like 13, she's old enough to be home alone. It's surprising that her brothers didn't come home, or an aunt or an uncle, or, Jeff is kind of around. But I was like, so how is she like eating dinner and like, having like bringing a lunch, or like having food for lunch? Like she's kind of expected to just take care of herself while her dad's in the hospital, and also to visit her dad in the hospital. But there's not really, other than Jeff, there's not really an adult who's taking charge of this situation. And so again, she's like, these adult responsibilities are kind of just being put on her by default, just because she's the kid that's still at home.
There's no adults taking responsibility for the situation is the tagline of Degrassi Junior High. But also like the thing with LD, and I'm maybe going a bit out on a limb here based on my own like adolescent experiences, but like I would assume that once her mom died, she was possibly elevated to like a more responsible or adult role than maybe she should have been as a child. Like, and so the assumption maybe is she can take care of herself, but like, fuck, would my mom have let me, like 13-year-old me, just be home alone? Like Jeff talks later about what it's like living on his own in his apartment. And it's kind of like, this sounds grim, dude. Why didn't you go stay with this kid who clearly needs supervision and maybe some support?
Yeah, like I think mostly emotional support.
But then I guess it's like, is it up to her dad's employee to be like the adult?
It's not really his. He's already doing a lot. in this situation. So it's not really like up to him, but it's just weird that no other adults or even another parent, and maybe no one knows, but her dad seems like he's capable of like talking on the phone and stuff. So it just seems very weird that there's no sort of like coordination among the adults, which just kind of further like isolates LD in this situation.
I mean, definitely, because if she were able to talk about it with somebody, then she might be able to talk about it with people at school. If there was somebody who she was able to confide in. I don't know. I'm really like I'm giving off strong Libra vibes right now. I'm seeing like every single side of this like
Well, also, the school project doesn't seem important to her because she's just imagining her dad's gonna die and she's gonna be orphaned. Like, that's a lot for a child to imagine.
Right? Like, and the project is like a map of like the area around the school. It's not that important. Like right, even if your dad's not in the hospital, that sounds like a dumb assignment. Also, I forgot to comment on this earlier, but when she is riding her bike back up to the garage when she's coming home, she has such like Tour de France like posture on this bike. Like she looks like a profesh cyclist, a seasoned cyclist. I'm just like, God, LD, what can't you do other than talk about your feelings?
And clean the kitchen.
Yeah.
So back at school, Arthur makes an announcement over the speaker telling everyone that their class project, the snake, has escaped. He is a golden brown California king snake who answers to the name of Amadeus.
Of course.
Melanie, who already knows about the snake, shows up to school with her, like these rain boots that are like taped up at the top. Which every single person in the hallway notices, which seemed a little unrealistic to me, but sure, everyone cannot believe these boots.
I would absolutely have noticed, but also this is smart and this is fly.
Yeah, it's not bad. Actually, speaking of, she's wearing my look of the week.
I love this sweater, and by the way, there's like 100 of them on Depop.
Nice. Yes. So the sweater is like a bright red sweater with white sheep all over it and one black sheep that's like kind of over her chest. And then she's also wearing red pants and carrying her red Speedo bag.
She looks amazing in red, by the way. She looks so good. I also just like, I love her very voluminous bob. Like, I just think Melanie always looks so good.
Snake is wearing a jacket with his name on it so that we know he's Snake, which will become relevant later. Oh, and he comments on her boots, but he just like compliments them. Basically.
I think the boots are so smart. Like, I would not want a snake crawling up my pant leg, which feels very imminent. Like, it feels possible. It's definitely within the realm of possibility when there is just a snake loose in your school. Like, honestly, A++, no notes, love the boots.
Yeah, I'm not mad at the boots. They're really not as distracting as they're making them out to be.
Super practical.
So in gym class, LD, Spike, and Vula are stretching, and the girls ask about getting together to work on the project today, but LD says she can't again. And then, Spike, to her credit, she says pretty much everything she was saying about her to her face. And she's like, we got to talk about these excuses. And then LD gives us our very first, I'm sorry, okay?
You think it's fair that we have to do all the work? Why don't you help for a change?
Look, I'm sorry, okay, but my dad's in the hospital. And I have to visit him. And it's just a little more important than a stupid social science project.
I'm sorry, okay?
And this is when she tells them that her dad is in the hospital. And once she tells them that, Spike immediately apologizes and says they'll just like cover the project for her.
Wow, I literally wrote in my notes, Spike immediately apologizes. Like, I just think this shows that Spike is a person who's very capable of empathy and also changing her mind and changing her opinion. It's like, sometimes it's really easy to get worked up in a lather about something that's happening when you don't have the full story, and then you find out that someone's got something going on in their personal life, and it's just like, oh, okay, like I recant. Like she can still be upset. Like she can still be upset that LD so far has not done what she should be doing. She can still be upset that on their last project, LD found a lot of excuses. Like none of those experiences are now negated, but I like that she's just like, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And
she had this past experience that like informed how she felt about the situation, and then she got that info and she was like, oh, my bad. We got
Honestly,
you.
I'm going to use this scene as like a blueprint for my life. It's very good.
And also we see Vula here in her gym clothes without her glasses, and she actually looks like really adorable. She usually has like the glasses and like a button-up frilly collared shirt and just like a lot going on. So we get to see like a more natural Vula.
Vula looks so good this entire episode. I did later screen grab a scene between her and LD, and both of their outfits are just incredible. Vula is just always having a good hair day. Also, like I feel like we don't talk about her and Melanie enough in terms of like just very good hair days all the time. I cannot imagine I don't recall a single day of school where my hair looked good.
Back in the garage shop, LD is asking Jeff what's it like living alone. And he tells her it's great. No one tells him when to come home or where to hang his clothes. But it's also lonely, so he has to set his TV on his table so he doesn't eat alone. However, his parents are right down the street, and his mom always makes a lot of food, so he's not alone for long.
Just when you thought it couldn't get worse, he's also like, but I only moved around the corner from my parents, so...
No one tells you where to hang your clothes. I'm like, Jeff, that doesn't seem like that much of a problem. I mean, clothes usually have a pretty specific place to go.
I mean, how old is he supposed to be?
He said he's been living on his own for a few years, so I'm assuming he's in his early 20s.
Okay,
I would guess 25. That was just the general.
I'm looking it up. Well, I'm looking up how old the actor was. I think that's probably...
The TV on the kitchen table, like I guess I wasn't in my 20s in the 80s, but that just seems kind of rough.
I'm gonna defend Jeff here because I have eaten alone many times with my computer on the table watching something.
That's true.
But it wasn't because I was lonely necessarily. It was just kind of like, I mean, I know that it's like nice and mindful to just like eat your food and only think about the food, but it's more like that it's just kind of boring to eat alone.
Fair enough. Maybe, and again, I wasn't at this age in this technological period of time, so maybe I would have been right there with him.
I mean, practically speaking, Jeff could maybe just invest in like a TV tray instead of moving the entire TV onto the onto the table.
Maybe he's got a nice little 13-incher, you know?
So LD has picked up some flowers on her way home. And she's kind of ready to go this time, but Jeff says he actually can't go today because apparently Mr. Jeremiah is being like a huge dick about getting his car back, even though LD's dad is in the hospital. So he kind of tells LD that she has to like go alone.
I mean, maybe Mr. and Mrs. Jeremiah share a car and they both need to get to work.
It's possible.
Carpooling's not working for the Jeremiahs.
So LD arrives at the hospital in an all denim look with like a little flannel shirt under there. Oh, her hat is also denim. And then, you know, she's sort of the hospital, honestly, I like how bustling it seems because it just seems kind of overwhelming. There's sort of people going in all directions. She sort of wanders over to this like map. But just being in the hospital, she starts to remember more conversations with her dad from when her mom was in the hospital. And the conversations that she's remembering were sort of getting closer and closer, I think, to actually her finding out that her mom has died as a child. But so initially, you know, everyone's kind of telling her that everything's going to be fine kind of thing. But yeah, so she gets really overwhelmed by all of this. And so then she goes up to the nurse at the front desk and asks her to bring the flowers to her dad instead because she's in a hurry. And then she just kind of bails.
When she's walking in, I swear the PA announcement is calling for a Dr. Habanero.
I listened back to that to see if you were right. I don't remember what it was, but you were not right.
Dang.
Like I saw your notes in the Google Doc and I was just like, oh, spicy. And then
were you just hungry, Paul?
I heard it both times, but it's very possible I was hungry both times. I also like that the audio effects going on in this scene, like many things on this show, it's not always well executed, but I really liked their effects that they put onto the ambient noise of the hospital. I'll maybe kind of do it in post when I'm editing this podcast, but for an example, they put flange on everything. So it kind of gives this wavy jet sound to everything that's going on. I think it's supposed to be disorienting or whatever. Probably not what I would do, but it's cool.
Do you think that was
breaking down the audio for us?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Do you think that maybe that sort of sound is related to LD's anxiety? It's like a mounting kind of pressure, or like
she's just kind of hearing warbly noise because she's having a lot, she's experiencing a lot and kind of having a flashback.
Yeah,
I think that's what they're trying to illustrate.
Oh, precious LD.
Okay, so she is out of there. So back at school, Susie, Arthur, and Yick head down to the boiler room with a box to catch Amadeus because, as Arthur says, it's the warmest place in the school. And Yick is like, but aren't snakes cold-blooded? And Arthur's like, listen, dude, I did my research. Snakes love boxes with grass and other snakes drawn on them.
It looked like a drawing of Nessie.
It totally did. It's really cute though, because it's of course he would decorate the box. The box does not need to be decorated. There's no purpose. But I love that he decorated something that did not need decorating. I related to him in that moment.
Yeah, it needs to be inviting. Amadeus has to want to come home.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually really reasonable.
Oh, also this boiler room is sick. There's all this kind of red lighting and I don't know what's going on down there. I'm assuming eventually something kind of naughty is going to happen down here, but I suppose I don't know. I know the boiler room was a source of a lot of activity in later iterations of the show.
Yeah, dude, the boiler room serves as a backdrop for, frankly, shenanigans. Yes. I love in the scene, Susie's like, if he got out, he could be anywhere. He could have gotten hit by a car. He could be dead. And I'm just like, yeah, dude, that's what would happen, obviously.
Yeah, I did also think it was funny that she thought he could have been run over by a car, because I just didn't imagine a snake really going for the street.
No, he'd go for the grass, I would think.
Yeah.
Also, they're trying to trap this snake with bologna.
Oh, yeah. That was my next note, was that Yick brought bologna. Yick is okay, I don't know what's going on with him, but he just has his own ideas going on. And yes, he has brought bologna to try to catch this snake.
Yeah, dude.
So back in the hallway, Melanie goes to her locker. She's kind of putting something away or getting something out. And some boys lower a little rubber snake down to prank her. And then she yells, "Snake!" And then Snake is like, "Yeah?
Huh?
Yeah?"
Perfect comedic timing. Perfect.
Also love that there's an announcement over the intercom. I don't think it's Raditch, but some school admin states that there's only one serpentine creature loose in the school, not a dozen missing tarantulas.
Oh, I didn't even catch that. Okay, so rumors are spreading Yeah, I
It's a
like
big
that.
deal.
It's a good addition. And honestly, I felt like, Melanie was like kind of asking to be pranked a little bit. It was pretty harmless. I'm not
This
mad
is
at this prank.
definitely, yeah, this is definitely a normal prank. This isn't like a
Yes.
sexist prank. She's not being violated. She's just having
Right,
her
right,
her
right.
phobia exploited.
And I guess
Yeah,
I
I mean
didn't mention it, but sorry, go ahead, Paul.
he's kind of going after. He's getting himself a little bit of heel heat. Like he's
Yeah.
definitely like going out of his way to not be cool to this person. But I agree.
They had an earlier interaction where he was I think this kid's name is Alex, where he was like kind of asking about the boots, and that's how he knows that she's afraid. So yes, he is going out of his way to prank someone who is specifically afraid of snakes. But also, I'm like, come on, you gotta have a little bit of fun with it. There's a snake loose in the school.
It's a
Classic
rubber snake.
school.
It's not like
Yeah,
he put an actual snake in her locker. So I
Yeah.
say no harm, no
classic
foul.
school stuff. Yeah,
Definitely.
love it.
So Vula and Spike are collecting money to buy flowers for LD's dad, which is very sweet. But they don't want her to know about it. It's supposed to be a surprise. So once LD comes to class, they kind of stop talking about it, and Vula asks LD how her dad's doing, and she says, "How did his eyes look?" Because her grandmother says you can tell a person's health by looking in their eyes. And LD's like, they look the same as always, I guess.
Vula's getting very old wives' tale about LD's dad's eyes. One detail was that when they're taking up the collection, Spike is like, "Oh yeah, like her dad sponsored our softball team last year," and I just wrote a note that said, "I would kill for a Delacorte garage softball jersey."
Ooh,
Right? It'd be good.
yeah.
It'd be really good.
Oh man, I would also, even if it was like a little like baseball tee,
Oh, absolutely.
I'd also
Imagine
take that.
maybe like I see LD in a lot of blue, and like Degrassi's got like a blue vibe. So it would probably be like a white shirt with blue sleeves and then maybe like a blue logo.
Yes.
Logo on the front and then like and then number on the back or something. Like logo front,
Yeah.
like top left, not like a full chest logo. I'd wear it.
Yes, if it
Yeah.
exists, it's probably amazing. But yeah, this is like some good background for Spike to sort of let us know, like, she has a history with these characters, like, because we haven't really met her yet. So she does know these girls already and is like already familiar with them. And it was just a nice, like, personal, like, I've met him, like, he sponsored our team, like, they're kind of saying, like, he's a good guy.
Yeah, we know him.
Right. So in the next scene, Vula and Spike, they head over to the hospital and buy some flowers from the gift shop. And then they go and find LD's dad's room. They're both wearing extremely oversized outfits and they look great.
I also took note of how oversized. I actually thought, though, if I'm honest, like they don't, like, LD hasn't said what's going on with her dad. Like, she hasn't said why he's in the hospital.
Right.
And so I actually wrote, I think it's a little audacious for these guys to just show up with flowers when they haven't asked LD if it's okay. Like, do you think your dad is up for visitors? Like, he could have like tubes coming out of his pee-pee or something. Like, we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it could be any reason that he's in the hospital. I would definitely, I personally would not go see someone's parent in the hospital without conferring. Like, I think buying the flowers is a very sweet thing, and maybe they could have surprised LD and been like, "We bought the flowers.
We bought you flowers." Yeah.
But I honestly think like it crosses a little bit of a boundary here that they don't involve LD in this conversation, and they just decide to go.
I guess they think that she's been visiting her dad, so they maybe think that it's okay to have visitors.
I guess like, but your kid visiting you
yeah.
and like your kid's friends visiting you when you feel like shit and you're in the hospital, I think those are very different. Maybe.
It's a weird plan.
Well, but we need them to go visit him so that he can tell them that LD has not yet visited him.
So that he can sell
really just
her out.
Yeah, so he can sell her out to them.
I also wrote, in my opinion, shitty of Mr. Delacourt to sell LD out to her pals and say she hasn't been to visit, because surely like he can understand if he took 2 minutes to think about why maybe she might be afraid to visit or might be uncomfortable visiting. Like, she's my kid. When was the last time she was at a hospital? It was when her mom died. Like, that would be, as a, if I were a parent, that would probably be my first thought. Like, why is my child having a difficult time with this? And then like just telling her friends like, oh yeah, she hasn't been here.
He's basically like confronted with the fact that like, okay, so my kid's friends are coming to visit me and my kid hasn't come to visit me. Like that's probably got to be a lot. And so, maybe he's not really maybe he doesn't really have like the mental capacity, if he's like healing, to like spend too much time thinking about that. I don't know. But then yeah, these kids just roll up and they're just like, hey, like, how are you? I don't know. And he's just like, oh yeah, well, hi, my child's friends, like, nice to see you.
So they say that LD doesn't know about the flowers. They wanted to surprise her with flowers from the whole class for the next time she visits. And that's when he says that she hasn't actually visited. So they kind of bring it up. And he might be trying to kind of get a message back to her by telling them, since these are like her friends. And he's kind of trying to explain it away. He's like, well, she hasn't actually visited yet because she has an important school mapping project, which is the very project she's been blowing off to allegedly go to the hospital. But the girls don't say anything. But so I think it's supposed to kind of be that, like, all of these things are finally like colliding. Like, he thinks that she's been working on this project. They think she's been going to the hospital. So we need some kind of like big reveal that's not going to come from like LD herself, because she's just kind of, trying to deal with this like on her own.
I do like that they don't immediately like blow up about it. Like they're not just like, what do you mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like I like that they don't.
Yeah, they don't get mad about it. They seem concerned. And actually, yeah, earlier when she was talking to Jeff, I did think, Jeff was he's a little bit clueless because she's asking about him living alone. So clearly she's thinking that she's like about to be orphaned and that she's going to have to live on her own. And he doesn't really pick up on that, which I'm not going to hold against Jeff, because he's like, yeah, possibly some dude in his early 20s. Like, he doesn't, I wouldn't expect him to like read into the situation that much. But she's clearly like trying to imagine what her life is going to be like without her parents, which is not something that she should be left to figure out on her own.
Yeah, it's not like a normal junior high 13-year-old worry.
Right.
But I also think he may have, because his response is like, oh, no one tells me where to put my clothes. I think, like, to give Jeff a little bit of credit, maybe he was kind of thinking she meant like, what's it like to live on your own? My dad's always nagging me. He's trying to get me to be someone I'm not. Like, how awesome is it? Like, for you to you to have that, as opposed to, what's it going to be like when I'm an orphan?
Right.
I think both of those things, I feel like both of those things are kind of at play with this, like her being uncomfortable with going to the hospital. Like, they illustrate it as like this like trauma that she has from her mom dying. But I just feel like there's got to be something going on about how her dad's just kind of a dick, and like she's doesn't want to deal with him, and like I don't know. They don't address it, but
they have like a kind of confrontational relationship. It seems like they're not necessarily close.
Yeah. And I think we get a little bit more of that when she talks to Vula.
Yeah, so before we get there, we see Arthur and Yick are checking their trap in the boiler room, and they think they caught something, but they have now been pranked by the rubber snake. Alex strikes again.
Got him.
I enjoy these pranks, I'm not gonna lie.
Love them.
I thought it was pretty funny to put the rubber snake in the box.
It's some Jim Halpert level pranking. Guten Prank.
So LD is sitting alone in the dark gym. Vula finds her there and tells her they've been looking all over for her. And this is when she tells her, she and Spike just came from the hospital where they brought her dad flowers. LD kind of snarkily is like, "Oh, how did his eyes look?" But Vula's just like, he looks okay actually. Which he did. He looked totally fine in the hospital. The bell rings and LD tells Vula she better get to class, but she stays. And then this is when they kind of have their heart to heart. Vula's asking, why she hasn't visited her dad. And LD tells her that when her mom was in the hospital, everyone told her that her mom would be okay. And then when LD finally went to visit her, that was when her mom died.
I think Vula's being a really, really good friend here. I think that she could have really easily kind of come after LD for lying and focused more on her own feelings about the situation. But instead, she just asks her why she hasn't been to see her dad. And, LD seems to have kind of a combination of fear and her bad relationship with her dad that are keeping her from visiting him. I think I really appreciate that they made it more complicated than just oh, she's afraid of going to the hospital. Because I think they could have made it that she and her dad are really tight. They've got a great relationship. And then she overcomes her phobia to go visit her dad, who she loves. But instead, I think that this episode really deals with the complicated feelings that that parents and children can have. And the fact that, you can be scared and you can be, you can love your dad, but you can also kind of hate your dad, or you can be upset about the way he's been treating you. But it can also kind of cause you to take stock in what's important. So I like that they put all of those things together in this, and that's not just one thing that's holding her back. She seems to have a lot of intersecting factors.
Right. It's more complicated than just the hospital. There's a lot more going on. And Vula's trying to reassure her, people also go to the hospital to get better. Her mom had an operation and was fine. Vula had her tonsils out last year, trying to reassure her. And LD's like, my dad probably doesn't want me to visit anyway because he's always yelling at me. And Vula's like, sounds like a normal dad to me.
That is not a normal dad.
That's not normal.
Vula has a very different idea of what normal is, and but to Vula that is a normal dad, and I think she's still trying to help and just be like, your dad loves you. He's just strict, or he's just having a hard time, or whatever.
He's just a man in the 80s.
Yeah,
he's doing the best he can.
Yeah, he's just well, I guess he doesn't have a mustache like Bula's dad, but he does have cars. And he's got his retro jammy set. So honestly, good for Mr. Delacourt.
Yeah. He could maybe be putting himself out there a little bit. And Vula also says that LD's dad needs her because she's all he's got left, which I was also like, Vula, no. Yeah, the advice was good and then it just got bad. It is not LD's responsibility to be there for her dad because her mom has passed away. I mean, I think we get the point that Vula's trying to make is that they need each other, but the way that she phrases it is a definite yikes from me.
It's a huge omission of boundaries. It's definitely, I think, a very old-timey view of what happened. If her dad died, her brother would be the man of the house, but her mom died, and now LD she's the lady of the house, and now she cleans the kitchen. I don't know, and Vula's parents are obviously much more traditional, and they're not from Canada, so I wonder if there's a difference in the way that Vula maybe looks at the family unit. But yeah, no, that I also think it's a little bit manipulative because it kind of negates the complicated relationship that they have. It's oh, you should just put all of this aside because he needs you. And
your feelings don't matter because your dad is in the hospital, but that's not true.
Like, I feel like I see that a lot on TV. Like, there's always like someone with an estranged parent, but then that parent's on their deathbed, so they go and make amends. And I'm just like, I have an estranged dad, and if he was on his deathbed, I would not be there. Like, and that's okay. Like, it's okay to not.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying this is very different. This is just like a teenager fighting with her dad, and her dad like kind of imposing strange gender roles on. But they don't seem to have like an abusive or toxic relationship. They just seem to be at odds about everyday things. But
all of these relationships are personal, and so like the situation you're just talking about is personal to you, and like these characters have their own personal situation that would like dictate kind of the actions that would make the most sense for them.
Yeah, dude.
So back in the library, Susie is still giving Arthur and Yick a hard time. And then Melanie hears a noise and finds a snake in a bag. It's been sitting like right next to the little snake cage the entire time. Which they clearly didn't do a very good job looking around the library before.
Also, is this Susie's bag?
No
I don't
idea.
know. It's just like a bag sitting on the table.
Okay, I was really confused. I was like, whose bag is this supposed to be? Because no one's like, oh, it's my bag. But like,
yeah, did someone bring it home with them?
I just wrote Susie's kind of a dick. I wrote that she's mad at Arthur and Yick, but she's not really helping. And if it's a collective class project, then even though these two are the ones that messed up, and she has every right to be upset about that, she still has a duty to help search for the good of the group. And then I wrote, I think Susie is a Virgo.
She just like can't let it go. She can't let a mistake go. Right? It was just, they've made a very like kind of a dumb mistake, but a very basic mistake. They just didn't, close something up properly. And she just absolutely cannot let it go. But that's her own problem to deal with.
The snake's cute though.
It is cute.
Yeah, Melanie even says so.
Yes, at first she wants to scream, but she sees Snake sitting across the library, so she doesn't, because she wouldn't want to have that happen again, where she says Snake and there's a person named Snake standing nearby, because apparently that's very embarrassing. But so instead she just kind of quietly tells Susie that she found it. And then she's like, oh, it's actually like pretty cute, which is true. It is a very cute little snake. And then the boys pick it up and scare Alex with it. So Alex, he gets his comeuppance.
I love it. But again, a very like nice way to scare him. Like they don't shove it in his face. They don't throw the snake on him.
They're kind of showing it to him.
Look at the snake. And that's it.
Really quick shout out to Alex. I don't know if either of you thought this, but I just felt like Alex just looked like he was a guy that would be heavily involved in the early 2000s Chicago punk scene.
He really did.
I put that he looks like if Elijah Wood and David Sedaris had a baby.
Aw.
Yeah, that guy would be cool.
But yeah, Alex is definitely like playing bass in a ska band or something.
Definitely. He's skanking on the weekends.
Yeah, he's got that look to him.
He actually loves skanking pickles. I'm in love with a girl named Spike.
Absolutely.
Probably. And then Melanie is like, some people are afraid of the silliest things.
I'm just like, all right,
okay,
calm down, Melanie.
Yeah, why don't you cool it?
like I was cool with her exposure therapy and her kind of like getting over her phobia, but now I'm like, oh, now you're veering into judgment.
Yeah,
so
just calm it down.
Just take it down like 6 notches.
So over at the hospital, LD has, finally, she's like, all right, I'm going to do this thing. She gets there. She finds her dad's room, and it's empty. So, of course, she assumes that her dad is dead, which, honestly, I kind of laughed at because, I was like, obviously he's not dead.
Someone would have called you. Or Jeff.
I thought maybe he was dead.
Gotcha.
Got my ass. I was like, oh, damn, where are they going to go now?
She very somberly takes off her hat. She's probably, imagining that She's going to have to move into an apartment and eat her dinner with her table on her TV. But then her dad walks in. He's alive. He just has a little angina. Nothing serious, except he has been in the hospital for like 3 days, which made it seem like it was kind of serious, but apparently not.
Well, I looked it up. So heart.org says that angina is chest pain or discomfort caused when your heart muscle doesn't get enough oxygen-rich blood. It may feel like pressure or squeezing in your chest, and the discomfort also can occur in your shoulders, your arms, neck, jaw, or back. Angina pain may even feel like indigestion. I also wrote, really wish there was a better word for that condition. And then also the other information is this usually happens because one or more of the coronary arteries is narrowed or blocked, which is also called ischemia. So angina is relatively harmless, but can be indicative of an underlying condition, and the underlying condition could be serious. So it doesn't sound totally harmless. It sounds like there's something going on.
But it's just a little angina.
Just a little angina.
Now, I was under the impression that angina was a city in Saskatchewan.
Are you talking about Regina?
Just a little joke I was working on.
I think he kind of mentions he has to start being healthier, but tobacco use is also a common cause of angina. And Jeff previously mentioned, like, if you're don't buy your dad any cigarettes if he asks. He tried to get me to buy some. So
ooh,
yeah.
Yes. Also, like, power move of Mr. Delacourt to ask his employee, who he is in a position of power over, to buy him cigarettes while he's in the hospital.
In the hospital.
Where he probably was... Like, he probably...
Do you think you're allowed to smoke in the hospital in the 80s?
I don't think so. Not in the rooms. I bet there was like a smoking visitors lounge. But I don't know. This is Canadian universal healthcare. Anything could be possible. Like, I bet it was very nice and they were well taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he just wanted to stay a couple extra days. You know, he had all his family portraits, he had his pajamas, a little break from work, a little break from his daughter.
I actually think that sounds kind of nice, yeah.
So LD says, from now on, she'll be just like he wants. And he says, as they're like walking out of the room, and he's like, I think you forgot something. And he puts his hat on her head. And then her dad is like, if you think hospitals are scary, you should try being the father of a teenage daughter. Har, har, har.
It was like almost a tender moment where you're like, oh, he accepts her. And then it was like, oh, no.
Yes, the hat on the head was supposed to be like, oh, now her dad accepts that she wears baseball caps.
Whatever.
But they do. It's some kind of like resolution between them, I guess. You know, she's kind of like, I'm sorry, I'll do what you want. And, you know, and he's like, no, like, just be yourself. And then, and when he says being the father of a teenage daughter, she's like, you'll get over it. So they have some kind of little banter moment. And then we get a freeze frame on them walking down the hall together.
Both in very good plaid shirts, by the way.
She gets it from her daddy. One thing that I wanted to mention is
I hate that. I hate it so much.
I don't know how they like cut the episodes for YouTube, but sometimes when I'm reading episode recaps, there's a couple scenes that we are not getting in the YouTube cut. Apparently there's a scene where LD like calls her dad from a payphone while he's in the hospital.
Does she hang up when he picks up?
I don't know. Whoever was talking about the scene said that it was funny, but I haven't actually seen it myself. But so just a note, we don't have the DVDs or anything. We're just watching on YouTube. So yes, if there are any other scenes that we seem to have skipped over, it may be that we just haven't actually seen them.
I would also love it if there's anyone out there in cyberspace who's got these scenes. Like, fork them over, man.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Hook it
I want to see
up.
this phone call.
Like, I remember, so obviously we're nowhere near this episode, but there's an episode in Next Generation that features an abortion. And I remember that was banned in America, and I had to find it on like a torrent. Like, I had to find the torrent on a message board.
Dang.
Yeah, I had to find like a Degrassi fan message board and then find a thread that discussed accidents will happen, part 1 and 2. And then I had to find, the episode and download it, because I was just like, well, I have to see every episode that's ever aired.
Of course.
I can't be missing one.
Can't relate.
I related to a few different people. I think I related to LD I'm not scared of hospitals, but sometimes I do have serious shit going on and I don't tell people. And it's not because I'm like scared of telling people. It's just like, maybe I'm just not ready to talk about it yet. So I've always had trouble with that. And then I think I kind of related though to Spike and Vula, who are trying to help, but then also, having trouble because LD is not being super forthcoming about what's going on. So that kind of like cycle that it went through of like a bit of judgment, but then understanding and then trying to help.
Paul, what about you? Did you relate to anybody?
No, I just said Snake because I would maybe just the whole time just be saying, huh? You're raising money for what? Huh?
What? What's going on?
Huh?
Huh? Or did you relate to the
what?
actual snake? I related to the actual snake sometimes. I just want to hide from everyone.
Nice.
No, I kind of related to Spike because I also love to hold a grudge and am often suspicious of people's excuses. But I will apologize if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
What did we learn from this episode?
Well, I feel like I learned that it can be sometimes very difficult to be there for a friend. And that people aren't always obligated to disclose everything about what's going on with them. And things aren't always cut and dry. You never know what someone might be going through. And the only way to grow is to be understanding and ready to listen.
Some real cancer feedback there.
Yeah, man. That was good.
Thanks.
What about you, LD?
I learned that it's good to open up to people, but when you're ready, and that you shouldn't feel pressure to. I also learned that it's healthy and good to be able to change your mind about someone, like Spike and Vula did with LD. They initially thought that maybe she was lazy or making excuses, but then found out that she had something really serious going on in her life, and then they were there for her. And no, that's it. That's it. That's what I learned.
And I learned that sometimes parents and their kids can get stuck in the same fights over and over, but something serious like a health scare can kind of bring them back together and make them realize that the things they've been fighting about don't really matter, like in the grand scheme of things. And also a lot of those fights are, they're sometimes temporary, or sometimes it's just a battle that, someone just needs to let go of. So I think that, LD's dad kind of realizes like, okay, maybe I need to like back off on my kid a little bit, because we don't really know if he gets that that's part of the reason that she didn't visit, but it seems like he had some time to reflect. So maybe he realized that, the way he's been speaking to her isn't really helping their relationship out. And also, yes, as you both kind of said, if you're having a hard time like with something, it helps to talk to your friends, but sometimes you just can't face something until you're really ready to.
If you're interested in seeing some of our looks of the week and also the utilitarian props of the week, feel free to check us out on social media. We are I'm Sorry Okay Pod. That's okay spelled O-K-A-Y. on Twitter and Instagram.
So that's it for Nothing to Fear, and next week we'll be discussing What a Night.